Jake and Noah were on their knees on the cold tile, wearing only underwear, bodies shaking, tears streaming down their faces. Eleanor sat on the closed toilet in her nightgown, arms wrapped tight around herself. And Vanessa stood over all of them with a large pitcher, pouring cold water over their heads, slow, methodical, her face completely blank. The water ran down their faces, their backs spreading across the floor. Noah sobbed, his small frame trembling hard. Jake had his arm around his brother, trying to shield him, jaw locked tight the way he did when he was fighting not to cry. Eleanor's voice came hoarse and desperate. "Vanessa, please, they're children. Please stop this." Vanessa's tone was flat, almost bored. "They need to learn. They were disrespectful at dinner. Actions have consequences." Marcus couldn't move, couldn't pull air into his lungs. His brain kept trying to make sense of what he was seeing, but nothing connected. This wasn't the woman he married. Not the woman who laughed in the kitchen and kissed him goodbye every morning. This was someone else wearing her face. A stranger. A monster. When his voice finally came, it came out low and deadly. "What are you doing?" If you're still here, type "I'm locked in." Let's see who's writing this story till the end. Vanessa spun around. The pitcher slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a sharp crack. For just a second, something crossed her face. Fear, maybe. Calculation. Then it shifted, softening into confusion, concern. The mask sliding back into place. "Marcus, you're home early. I was just..." Don't say another word." He moved past her and dropped to his knees beside his sons. They collapsed into his arms, both crying openly now, their cold, wet skin soaking through his shirt. Eleanor's hands shook as she reached out to touch his shoulder, her eyes filled with relief and something harder to name. Shame, maybe, that she hadn't found a way to protect them. "Dad, we didn't do anything," Jake choked out through sobs. "We didn't finish our vegetables, and she said we were ungrateful and made us come up here. And I'm here now. It's okay." Marcus pulled both boys tighter, his mind racing. How long had this been happening? How many times had he been traveling while his children suffered? While his mother was humiliated and terrorized in her own home? He looked up at Vanessa. She was still standing there, her face now arranged into wounded innocence. "Marcus, you don't understand. The boys have been difficult lately. Rude, defiant. I was teaching them discipline. My father used to..." "Get out." Marcus stood slowly, his sons clutching his legs. "Get out of this bathroom. Out of my sight." Vanessa's mask cracked. Just for a heartbeat, Marcus saw what lived underneath. Cold, empty, nothing. Like love or care or any emotion she'd performed so well for 18 months. "You're overreacting," she said, her voice going sharp. "You're never here. You don't see how they act when you're gone. Someone has to get out." The roar bounced off tile walls. Vanessa flinched, then turned and walked away without another word, her footsteps fading down the hall. Marcus spent the next hour getting his family warm and dry. He wrapped the boys in thick towels and soft pajamas, made them hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, the kind he never allowed on school nights. He sat with Eleanor in her room while she cried and apologized, as if any of this could be her fault. "She said she'd take the boys if I told you," Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking. "Said she'd convince everyone I was senile, losing my mind, that nobody would believe an old woman over her." Marcus, I was terrified. I couldn't lose my grandsons. Not after losing Sarah. I couldn't. Marcus held his mother's weathered hands and felt something cold and dark building in his chest. Not hot rage. Something quieter. More dangerous. How long has this been happening? 3 months, maybe 4. Started small. Cold showers instead of warm if they misbehaved. Standing in corners for hours, skipping meals. Then it got worse. The water punishment, she called it. Making them kneel while she poured pitcher after pitcher until they apologized for whatever imaginary crime she'd invented. Marcus thought about all those business trips, all those text messages, the boys being sick, the stomach bugs, the fevers. Had she been poisoning them? Making them sick so he wouldn't question why they seemed so tired, so withdrawn? The boys never said anything. She threatened them too. Said if they told you, you wouldn't believe them. That you loved her more now. That you'd send them away to boarding school where things would be even worse. Eleanor's voice cracked. Marcus, they're so young. They believed her. Marcus sat in the dimness of his mother's room, listening to his son's quiet voices drifting from down the hall as they talked to each other, trying to make sense of what happened. And he made a decision. This wasn't finished. Not even close. Vanessa didn't come to bed that night. Marcus found her in the guest room the next morning, perfectly dressed, makeup flawless, as if nothing had happened. She tried to speak. He walked past her without a word. He'd already called his lawyer and a private investigator at 6 that morning. He wanted to know everything about Vanessa Collier. Every detail. Every secret. The next few days were harder than anything Marcus had lived through, and that included the weeks after Sarah died. At least then his grief had been clean. Honest, this was different. This was living under the same roof with someone who'd tortured his family, pretending everything was normal while he waited for answers. He took the week off work, told his assistant it was a family emergency, kept the boys home from school. When Vanessa asked why, he said they were still recovering from being sick. She just nodded, playing along with her own lie. She tried to act normal, cooking elaborate meals nobody touched. Offering to help with homework, Marcus insisted on handling himself. The boys stayed close, never out of his sight when Vanessa was nearby. They slept in his bed that first night, one on each side, their small bodies pressed against his, like they were afraid he might vanish. Eleanor moved through the house like a ghost, jumping at sudden sounds, her eyes always tracking wherever Vanessa was. Marcus watched his wife and wondered how he'd been so blind, but his lawyer explained it during one of their calls. Abusers are often expert performers. They show different faces to different people. To the outside world, to colleagues and friends, Vanessa had been charming, devoted, the perfect stepmother. Only behind closed doors, when Marcus wasn't there, did the mask come off. The investigation started turning up things that made Marcus's stomach turn. Vanessa Collier wasn't even her real name. She'd been born Vanessa Chun. Changed her name after leaving California under circumstances nobody wanted to talk about. Gaps in her employment history. References that didn't check out. A restraining order from a previous employer that had been quietly settled with money. The worst news came on day 4. His investigator called with information that changed everything. Mr. Ashford, you need to hear this. Vanessa's been in regular contact with someone. A man named Richard Stokes. Marcus went cold. Richard Stokes. His biggest business rival. The CEO of a competing logistics company who'd been trying to buy Marcus's company for years, making increasingly aggressive offers Marcus kept refusing. They'd been locked in a bitter legal fight over a patent dispute for the past year. What kind of contact? Phone calls, emails, meetings. Goes back almost 2 years, Mr. Ashford, before she even met you. And there's money. Regular deposits into an offshore account in her name. 200,000 so far. Last payment was 3 weeks ago. If this reminds you of someone's story, share it in the comments. Your words inspire our next tailies. Marcus sat down hard. The room tilted. 2 years. She'd been planning this for 2 years. Their meeting at the charity gala hadn't been chance. It had been staged. Everything had been staged. The courtship, the marriage, the slow poisoning of his family, literally and emotionally. What was she after? The best we can figure, information. Corporate espionage. She had access to your home office, your computers, your files. And, Mr. Ashford, there's more. We found evidence she's been putting small amounts of ipecac syrup in your mother's tea and the boys' food. That's what's been making them sick. She was breaking down your family, isolating you, making you dependent on her. Theory is once you were vulnerable enough, she was going to push you to sell the company. probably to Stokes well below market value. Marcus thought about all those nights coming home exhausted, stressed about work, and Vanessa being so understanding, so supportive. Listening to him talk about business problems, offering sympathy and suggestions. She'd mentioned several times recently that maybe it was time to slow down, sell the company, enjoy life, spend more time with family. He'd thought she cared about his well-being. She'd been steering him toward her goal. There's one more thing, the investigator said carefully. We found searches on her laptop. How to worsen certain health conditions. How to fake dementia symptoms in elderly patients. And Mr. Ashford, she was researching boarding schools. The kind in Europe that are very difficult for parents to withdraw children from once they're enrolled. Marcus felt physically sick. She'd been planning to have him send his sons away. After breaking them down, after making home unbearable, she would have convinced him it was for their own good. And his mother, she'd been slowly making Eleanor seem incompetent, unreliable, confused. How long before Vanessa suggested it was time for a nursing home? She'd been trying to erase his entire family, leave him alone with nobody to trust, nobody to turn to accept her. Once she had that control, once she'd gotten him to sell his company to her partner in crime, what then? How long before Marcus had an accident? Before Vanessa became a wealthy widow? That evening, Marcus made copies of everything the investigator found, stored originals in a safety deposit box, consulted not just his lawyer, but a criminal attorney, called his security team and upgraded the house surveillance system. Cameras in every room except bedrooms and bathrooms. He wanted everything documented from here forward. Then he did something that went against every instinct screaming in his head. He went downstairs and found Vanessa in the living room, reading a magazine like she didn't have a care in the world. We need to talk. She looked up, her face carefully neutral. I've been hoping you'd say that. Marcus, about the other night. I know how it looked, but I know everything. He cut her off. I know about Richard Stokes, the money, what you've been doing to my family. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, her expression changed. The warm, concerned wife disappeared completely, replaced by someone cold. When she spoke, her voice was different, too. Harder. You can't prove anything. I can prove all of it. Bank records. Phone records, emails, security footage showing what you did to my sons and mother, medical records showing Ipecac in their systems. I have enough to put you away for a long time. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. So what are you waiting for? Call the police. Put me in jail. Drag this through courts, where every detail of your life becomes public. Your sons testifying about what happened. Your mother was questioned on a witness stand. Your company's stability is questioned. Your competitors are using the scandal. Richard still wins. Marcus had thought of all this. She was right. A public trial would devastate everyone he loved. His sons traumatized again, the media tearing apart their private pain. Vanessa was smart enough to know it. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said quietly. You're signing divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences, waiving any claim to alimony or property, signing a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from ever speaking about me or my family, and you're leaving tonight. Vanessa laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. And if I don't, then I release everything to the police. I don't care about the scandal, don't care what it costs. You go to prison. I make sure Richard Stokes goes down too for corporate espionage and conspiracy. I'll spend every cent I have burying you both. They stared at each other across the living room. Marcus watched her calculate, weigh her options. She'd almost won, gotten so close, but not close enough. You'll give me something, she said finally, for my silence. $1 million. 500,000. And you sign a confession detailing everything you did and everyone you worked with. Stays sealed unless you ever violate the NDA or come near my family again. Vanessa's face twisted, but she was cornered, and she knew it. Fine. The papers were ready within 48 hours. Marcus had lawyers present for every moment, making sure nothing could be contested later. Vanessa packed her designer clothes, her jewelry, everything she'd collected during their marriage, and loaded it into a car service Marcus arranged. She didn't say goodbye to the boys or Eleanor, just walked out without looking back. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with just making her leave. He wanted justice, not only for his family, but for anyone else Vanessa and Richard might target down the road. He called Richard Stokes. "Marcus," Richard answered, voice falsely cheerful. "What can I do for you?" "I have a business proposition. Let's meet tomorrow, my office." Richard agreed, probably thinking this was it, that Vanessa's plan had finally worked, that Marcus was ready to sell. He showed up the next day in an expensive suit, wearing a confident smile. That smile died when he walked into Marcus's office and found not just Marcus, but Marcus's legal team and 2 FBI agents specializing in corporate fraud. What would you do if you were in his place? Let us know below. We read every comment. The confession Vanessa signed, combined with the evidence Marcus's investigators gathered, was enough. Richard had made a critical mistake. Some payments to Vanessa came from company accounts, which meant wire fraud and corporate espionage charges. The FBI had been building a case against Richard's company for other violations, and this gave them what they needed. Richard Stokes was arrested that afternoon. His company's stock crashed. The board removed him within a week. Eventually, he took a plea deal to avoid trial and got sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Vanessa, true to form, tried to disappear, took the $500,000 and left New York. But the confession she signed included one clause she hadn't fully understood. If she ever used a false identity again, engaged in fraud, or came within 500 miles of Marcus or his family, the confession would be unsealed and handed to law enforcement. Marcus had lawyers check on her periodically. She moved to Arizona, then Nevada, working ordinary jobs under her real name. The money dried up eventually. Last Marcus heard, she was managing a hotel in Reno, living in a small apartment, alone. Nothing like the mansion she'd almost taken. The months after Vanessa left were difficult in different ways. Marcus had to rebuild trust with his sons, help them understand none of this was their fault, that they should have been protected. He found a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. The boys started talking about what they'd been through. Slowly, carefully, they began healing. Jake's nightmares stopped after about 6 months. He went back to soccer, started bringing friends home from school. Noah took longer, struggled with anxiety, with trusting new people. But with time and patience and his father and Nana there every day, he found his way back to being a kid again. Eleanor recovered too, though she carried guilt for not stopping Vanessa sooner. Marcus reminded her often that she'd been a victim too, that she'd protected the boys as best she could under impossible circumstances. They spent more time together now, 3 generations healing as one. Marcus restructured everything to be more present, changed how his company operated so he could work from home more, attended every soccer game, every art show, every parent-teacher conference, made breakfast on weekends, helped with homework every night, read bedtime stories even though Jake insisted he was too old for that. On what would have been his 5th anniversary with Vanessa, Marcus took the boys and Eleanor to the lake. They scattered Sarah's favorite flowers on the water, said prayers, talked about her. It was time to honor the past properly, without Vanessa's shadow hanging over everything. "Dad," Jake said as they drove home that evening, "do you think you'll ever get married again?" Marcus looked at his son in the rearview mirror. "Maybe someday, but not for a long time. And never unless I'm absolutely certain. Never unless you and Nana are okay with it. You 3 are my family. Nothing matters more than that." Noah, who rarely spoke about serious things, piped up from the back seat. "We're enough, Dad. Just us. We're enough." Marcus realized his youngest son was right. They were enough, more than enough. Wealth, success, business, respect, none of it mattered if the people you loved weren't safe and happy. He'd nearly lost everything chasing the idea of having it all. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property or business deals. It's measured in moments. In his mother's laughter teaching the boys to bake cookies that always burned a little. In Jake's excitement scoring a goal and looking to the stands to make sure his dad saw. In Noah's small hand reaching for his when they crossed the street. It's measured in who stands beside you when everything falls apart. In those quiet moments after the storm when you rebuild not just your life, but your understanding of what actually matters. Marcus Ashford built an empire, but his greatest achievement wasn't his company or his money. It was being there for his sons when they needed him, choosing them over and over, every single day. Would you have seen the signs sooner? Would you have handled it differently? Tell us in the comments. And if this story moved you, wait until you hear the next one. Subscribe now and turn on notifications because some stories are too powerful to miss. Stories about real people facing impossible choices. Stories that remind us what we're capable of, the darkness and the light. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the strongest families aren't the ones that never face trouble. They're the ones that face it together and come out the other side still holding on to each other. We'll see you in the next story.